some people will look at us and think, like, these guys are sellouts to their own people, and usually the ones saying that are white people, and that's what frustrates me. Well, like, I don't need them talking down to me,
Right.
and that's kind of what I wanted to get at. Where how were you born and raised in a conservative, traditionally conservative family, religious maybe? How was your upbringing?
Yeah, so it's kind of a mixed bag mainly, and I only say that because there was never really a huge focus on politics. Like if you were to ask me 5 years ago, even like anything really related to politics, I wouldn't honestly have had one opinion one way or another. I just wasn't involved in it. I didn't care. I wasn't. It just didn't matter to me. Like I was very just apolitical.
Hmm.
And I kind of was raised. I mean, I was raised as a Christian. Every Sunday we went to church and all of that, but never did my parents really get into that, or was I into it at all. And then literally just a couple of years ago, I mean really before COVID and all that stuff, when I started on Parlor and started posting about stuff, I started realizing, hey, wait a minute, like what are these? Like I couldn't even tell you the difference between like a liberal and a conservative like
Mm.
5 years ago, but like over time I was like, okay, there's these things happening, and I saw what Trump was doing, and I'm like, okay, this guy seems really straightforward and everything. And then I started kind of trying to see where I landed on the political spectrum. And then as I looked, I'm like, man, everything that I've ever believed in or that I've done is all conservative. Like it just
Mm.
that way. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm a conservative. So I just started going in, and from there started making social media accounts, and that was really it.
Mm. Yeah, I think Trump was like a moment of choosing for a lot of people, where they
Yeah,
kind of
for
looked at
sure.
themselves in the mirror, because, well, I'm still trying to figure out how it is that a bunch of white people ended up voting for Trump, but they were okay with a black man for 8 years.
Yeah,
So,
right. Exactly.
so
Like, okay.
it's like, hold on, it doesn't compute.
Right.
I wish I had that overlay for Steven Carter was doing the math.
Yeah, all those
Hold
signs
on,
and
how does
everything.
that work?
Right.
um it's, and as for me, it's similar to yours.
Mhm,
My upbringing is quite similar. I'm first generation American, but
mhm,
quite similar upbringing in that I was born and raised in a Christian church. I didn't become a Christian until I was 12 when I accepted Christ as my
mhm.
personal savior. I wasn't baptized until I was 16. And after that, I'm like, oh, now the Christian lifestyle's going to be easy. No, that's when it became harder.
Yes, definitely.
And
So much
I
harder.
would say I didn't start living for Christ until I was 18.
Yeah.
And ever since then, it's just been like a pendulum. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm in the
Yeah.
spirit, not in the spirit, I'm in the spirit, not in the spirit.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh, God, please save me from myself. So that's why I'm Christian. I'm Christian because I'm flawed. I'm
Mhm.
not because I think of myself as the best. If anything, I'm my harshest critic. But in terms of politics, my parents never talked politics. No one ever dealt with
Mhm.
it per se. It was always just mandated by, like, wait, how many taxes does a small business need to pay this year?
Right.
Like, are we gonna make ends meet this day or not? And that's usually what dictated our ability to, well, my parents' the decision on how they would vote. And when I grew up in the I went to the public school system since I was sixth grade. After that, I went to a private Christian school. That didn't make me Christian. That didn't mean people were Christian. They were just being ministered to.
Mhm.
And, well, we got into all sorts of trouble for all sorts. But after that, I don't know where I carried anti-American sentiments, because I don't remember that ever being taught
Yeah.
in my private Christian school. And in my younger years back then, I'm only 37, but in my younger years in
Mhm.
elementary, I remember being scolded by my teacher because I didn't stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mm.
Imagine that today.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember that in elementary school. I mean, that for us that was what everyone did. I mean, that was the thing. There was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And now it's like, oh, well, they don't even really care anymore. The teachers don't, half of them are basically sitting down the whole time. It's crazy.
Did they even do it? That's my question. I don't recall
I
them
don't think
doing
they
it.
do. And I even remember, I mean, generally speaking, it was okay for even the teacher to pray in the classroom,
Mm.
at least in the public school, very early on. I remember it kind of going away when I was in high school, but that was just very interesting.
yeah, it feels like a bygone era. Like,
It
what?
really, it does. It does. It
It's
does.
amazing how much has changed. Even in the 5 years
Mhm.
that you mentioned, it's like,
Yeah.
dude, where was this? I mean, how many
Yeah.
people love
Right.
The Office back? You can't do The Office anymore. The show.
No.
It's like,
No.
wow, that
And it's funny. I was actually going back and watching a few older TV shows, and one of the ones that came up was actually House. If you remember that one, you know, I remember watching it a little bit like years and years and years ago when it came out because I think it came out in 2004.
something like
And
that.
so I was going back and rewatching it now, and I'm like listening to this, and I'm like, man, there's so many things that this guy. I mean, they would be calling this guy he's a toxic white male, and I mean, but it's so funny. Like it's almost like refreshing because it's like this is what TV used to be. It's so funny. It's so good, you know.
I'm so glad you brought that up because this is how I describe Trump. It's like all of you love Dr. House until he's your doctor.
Yes, exactly.
It's like, oh, you
So
watched
true.
that episode of House? Oh man, he's such a jerk. It's like you guys loved Trump before he became president.
Right, right, exactly.
It's like,
Yeah. True, true.
and that's what saddens me. But I'm not sheltering my kids or anything of the
Mhm,
sort. They're finding their way on their own in a way, but it's also
mhm.
my job to train a child the way they should go. So
Absolutely, yeah.
and so I do I have my approach and my wife has her approach, and I think that's what's important about the nuclear family, like
Mhm.
both the mom and the father being present for the children,
Definitely,
and
yeah.
I had that growing up. But they instilled the values on me, and like I mentioned, I don't know where that anti-American sentiment came to me. It's like, why I hate the United States. I
Mhm,
I couldn't explain it to you.
mhm,
um but then there was like a light bulb that switched in my mind, and I don't know how it changed, but then I kind of had like a soul search and realized, holy smokes, this is the country I actually do value, and this is the place I can
mhm,
do what I want to do, and it's worth defending. Then I was,
definitely.
oh, so
Mhm,
I am conservative too.